Marcia Lee, and welcome to A Living History of Bronxville. This year we've been interviewing people associated with the healthcare industry. We've interviewed Dr. Fritz Stein, and Dr. Craig Smith, and Barbara Yeager, involved in the chaplaincy. And today we have two people who have played a tremendous role in healthcare in the Bronxville area and even a broader area. They are Dennis E. Glazer, who is chairman of the board of Lawrence Hospital, and Edward is fine. M. Dinan, who is the CEO and president of Lawrence Hospital. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
We usually start this interview off with just getting to know a little bit about you. We put this tape in the history room, so we want some record of you all. So, Dennis, why don't you maybe start off with telling us how you came to Bronxville and
Sure.
what you're doing?
I'm a good husband. I live where I'm told.
You're a good husband. You live where you're told?
Right.
Okay.
My wife picked out Bronxville before she picked out me, I think.
And could you explain that so the audience will know
Sure.
what you're...
My wife, Janet DeFury, grew up in Mount Vernon, right next door, and has loved the Bronxville Village from the time she was a little girl.
And she is currently
She is currently a Supreme Court Justice and a supervising judge of the criminal courts for the 9th Judicial District. But we're Bronxville residents since 1998, and I am a lawyer. I practice in New York City at the law firm of Davis, Polk, and Wardwell.
Right, and you have an interesting practice. Tell them
I do have
what
an
you
interesting
do.
practice. I'm very lucky that way. I do a lot of securities work, securities litigation, securities regulation work. I work on mergers and acquisitions, and I'm co-head of the litigation department at Davis Polk.
Yeah. And you should see the list of mergers and acquisitions and litigation between powerful companies that you've
there's
had.
a lot of ugliness in the world, and lawyers help straighten it out.
So now you moved here in 1988, right?
1988. Did I say 98?
You said 98, but
yeah.
When did you become chairman of the board of Lawrence? When did you get on the? When did you?
I went on the board at Lawrence in 1996. One of my law partners, who's also from the village, John Corey,
oh yes,
was on the law committee, and he was backing off some of his responsibilities at the hospital and asked me if I'd be interested in getting on the law committee.
And little did you know.
Little did I know. I went on the law committee and within a year abolished it.
Abolished?
Yes.
Is that the truth?
That is
and
the
what
truth.
did John Corey have to say about that?
By then, John was off. No, what happened was when I got involved in the hospital had many more committees than it has now. And we had a retreat, and a few of us organized a re-look at the hospital and how many committees it had and how we could best organize to be more efficient. And we reduced the number of committees from 17 at the time to 4 standing committees now.
Amen.
That was over the course of time. So that's why I said.
And then when did you become chairman of the board?
I became chairman of the board in January of 2003. Following George Austin, who had been chairman for 10 years and certainly had done his time.
Big job.
Big job he had done. And in fact, the biggest thing he had done is bring aboard the person you're about to meet next, Ed Dinan.
Okay. Ed, take it away.
Well,
what about you and what, your background, et cetera?
Well, it's not nearly as exciting as Dennis's.
Well, I don't know. You should tell everybody how your first job before you went into hospital.
Well, I started out as a school teacher. I taught
in biology.
I was a biology, science teacher, and basketball and baseball coach.
So.
And it was a very rewarding and interesting profession, and enjoyed it a lot. But had the opportunity to go to Cornell to business school and.
In health, it's an MBA in health, or
yes, you complete all the requirements, and some majors are in accounting or finance, or mine happen to be in health.
Yeah.
And from there I went to Delaware, and was there for 7 years, and from Delaware
with a hospital in Delaware,
with a medical center in Delaware, and then was recruited away to West Virginia.
To West Virginia.
And. Lived there for 5 years, and then in 1990 went to Maryland to become the CEO of the first lay CEO of a Catholic hospital system, and held that job for 6 years, and then in that process acquired a hospital and merged with another hospital and became president of that merged entity in '96. And then I got a strange call from a headhunter that asked me if I would be interested in looking at an opportunity in Bronxville, and I said, "Where is that?"
Well, so you came in anyway.
So I came anyway, and met some wonderful people. And I still remember riding up in the elevator with Mary Giffra and a sewer pipe, because there was a lot of construction going on at the time for the interview. And there were just it was the first ER renovation and the ICU renovation that was going on at the time. And I met some very wonderful people, very committed people. And what struck me about it, and what brought me back, was the fact that people talked about this community of Bronxville, and talked about their school, and they talked about the wonderful people that lived here. And they said, we want a hospital that is commensurate with our community, that's a model for other community hospitals. And we'd like you to help us direct it and get us there.
Well.
And I just met, I always say it was like a perfect murder. There were means, motive, and opportunity, and
it all came together.
It all came
Mary
together.
Giffra is my next door neighbor, and I can remember her saying, "We've really got a good one." I can just remember her saying that.
It's true. We like to think that Ed spent his entire career before coming to Lawrence just preparing for this job.
Well, I think you'll see by the end of this interview that an awful lot of very positive things have happened under both of your administrations. I mean, this hospital is one of the best hospitals in Westchester County and even beyond, right?
It really is.
That's not too big a statement.
We're very proud of it.
Yeah. Well, let's learn a little bit more about it. First, Ed, maybe you could start off by telling us a little bit about the major services offered at the hospital, the major departments.
Sure. Well, one of the things that constantly amazes me is the reputation that Lawrence has throughout the country. Both Dennis and I are fortunate that we have daughters that attend Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, and we were both down there for Parents Weekend 2 weeks ago. And I was in the hotel in the fitness center there, and we were talking to a gentleman, and he asked me where I was from, and he told me he used to live in Bronxville, and he told me his kids were born here, and went on to tell me about how he loved Lawrence Hospital. And I said to him, it's funny, it happens to me at least twice a month that I'll meet somebody, not just from Westchester, but from different parts of the state, different parts of the country, who tell me that they were born or their children were born at Lawrence. And so obstetrics is a big part of...
That's one of the biggest departments now?
It is. And in 2003, we passed a milestone, and it was just pure coincidence. We delivered 2,003 babies.
And I have to interject something at this point. Back in the 70s, I was in office here in the village, and they almost closed down the pediatric section.
We're glad you didn't.
And I can remember Dr. Gregory and some other doctors joining together to try to save it. We petitioned the state legislature and everything. So what a turnaround. What an unbelievable turnaround.
It continues to grow and expand, and in fact that's something perhaps we'll talk a little about later, some of our exciting building plans to keep pace with the demand for that service.
What are some other big departments?
Well, certainly the other thing that a lot of the viewers, in fact most of the viewers, come in contact with is the emergency room.
Right. Now you've recently really expanded that,
we
haven't
have.
you? And renovated the whole thing. In fact,
More
you ripped
coming.
out the whole...
More coming.
More coming. What more could you have? Oh, you're going to enlarge it.
Yes.
Yes. When we began the planning for that, there were 25,000 visits a year, which was a lot, especially if those of you remember the small, old emergency room.
Right.
We expanded it and modernized it, and with that came success. And this year we'll probably have 35,000 visits.
Oh, wow.
And it is a very, very busy place. It's literally the front door of the hospital. 50% of the admissions to the hospital come through the emergency room. And about 20% of the people who visit the emergency room are serious enough that they have to be admitted. So it is a very busy place that often gets backed up. And one of our most focused on targets, and one of the things we hear most about, is how long do I have to wait?
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's not because people are back there not willing to see you, it's that we have no place to put you.
Yeah. So you're going to expand it and have more beds?
We're going to expand it and have more beds and try to continue to grow that service. And again, we'll talk a little bit about that later.
Well, I just have to tell you that my husband owes his life to that emergency room, and he's been rushed there twice with pulmonary emboli, and my younger daughter was rushed there once very seriously ill.
About 100 people a day come there.
Do they?
100 people
I don't know
a day.
what I would do without it.
It's a wonderful resource for the community. It really is.
It is.
Very
Well, it's
important.
much more than the community. When sitting there, you can see that it attracts far and wide.
Well, and what people don't realize is that what it takes to support that. And in your daughter's case or your husband's case, in addition to the great emergency room and obstetrics that are supporting the hospital, there are tremendous resources that go beyond it. So that if you're coming in with a cardiac problem, you need a tremendous, you need cardiologists. And we have a great staff of cardiologists, all of whom have been trained in most of the major medical schools in the city and have chosen to be here for the same reasons that we choose to live here. It's a quality of life issue. We have, constantly injuries on the athletic field or accidents, and we have great orthopedic surgeons here that are terrific. In addition to that, we've got a great pediatric staff and a great surgical staff. And unfortunately, we also have, for those unfortunate situations, a great staff of oncologists. And so it's a full-service community hospital that not only provides all this care, but it supports the emergency room.
Well, I know at 2 o'clock in the morning, they were wheeling my husband up to the second or third floor or whatever to take x-rays and to do all sorts of checks at 2 o'clock in the morning on Sunday.
Oh, it's 24/7.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about maintaining that all, tremendously expensive too.
Whenever it's needed, it's there.
Yeah. Well, tell us, you started to tell us about all the physicians. We have wonderful physicians at the hospital. What about the nursing staff? We read so much that it's almost impossible to get a nurse these days. Is this...
It's very hard to get a nurse. It's very hard to get nurses. There's a nationwide shortage of nurses, and we live in an area and operate in an area that there's a lot of competition for nursing staffs. The city hospitals, all the hospitals in Westchester, Connecticut, New Jersey. For a qualified nurse, there's a lot of opportunity.
Right.
So we've taken steps to make sure that we recruit and retain the very best nurses. That means being highly competitive in salaries. It means supporting the nurses when they look for professional opportunities to advance their education. It means that we look for opportunities to involve nurses in the decision-making in the hospital. And, very much so, they are a part and parcel of the delivery of terrific services to our patients.
Right. And they do a good job. My experience has been really...
They are terrific, and
laudatory of the nurses.
And just to give you an idea of where the board supports this issue with more than just words, is that at a recent board meeting they invited 5 staff nurses along with Roseanne O'Hara, the Vice President for Patient Care Services, to make a presentation about nursing and asked some very open questions and asked what they needed, made sure that they had what they needed. They're very involved. And making sure that we have the very best nurses. And in fact, this year, which will be out shortly, our annual report to the community is dedicated and will feature our nursing care.
What a great idea.
Yeah.
What a good idea.
And, as other hospitals struggle and some close, we've taken that opportunity to recruit some of their nurses.
Right. Well, that's good.
The qualified nurses don't have any problem finding jobs, and we want them to come with us.
I'm fond of saying that patients will come to a hospital because of their doctor. They come back because of their nurses.
Of the nurses. I think there's an awful lot of truth in that.
Yeah.
Really. Because you remember the kind of day-to-day care you have in the hospital.
You do.
Now, you mentioned the Board of Governors, and maybe, Dennis, you can tell us a little bit. We have a lot of people from the community
we do.
On that Board of Governors.
While we serve much more than just the Bronxville community, the Bronxville community provides a majority of our board leadership and board members. Our Board of Governors includes people from Bronxville, George Austin, of course, who was chairman of the board for 10 years.
Yeah.
Tori Biagioni,
Yeah.
a neighbor of mine, Emily Bogle, Elaine Conway, Mary Giffra, who we mentioned before, neighbor
Right.
of yours, Georgia Gogel, Peter
She just
Hicks.
came on, didn't she?
She did. She's
Yeah.
a recent addition and a
Yeah.
wonderful addition to our board.
I'm sure she is, yeah.
We are constantly refreshing our board with new blood. Georgia, as you know, served the school admirably
Right,
for many
right,
years, and
right.
when she got done with that obligation, we put
You,
our hooks-
you took her over. There's,
know good
there's
talent.
often a progression that way. I
Exactly.
think Ellie Erstad had that same progression.
She did
with others,
indeed.
too, yeah.
Scott Mackesy, Corky Messerol, Mike Minter, Andy Paul, Jill Rappaport, Chris Regan.
Oh, what a
So
what a blue ribbon
Vic Sammer,
committee.
and recently Tom Welling. Terrific
Yeah.
group of people who actually provide absolutely wonderful leadership for the hospital. Not on a day-to-day basis. That comes from Ed.
What a difference it makes to have really knowledgeable, capable people on a board like that.
Well, and I think not only knowledgeable but supportive, because
Yeah.
they have a vision for what they want this hospital to become and to be, and they support that, not
Right.
only with their volunteer work, but also philanthropically. They support the hospital. They ask tough questions, and they listen to their neighbors, and
Right.
they bring that to the table when we
Good caliber of discussion and input.
it's great.
Victor Samara is a friend of mine, and he was telling me how he had chairing a committee on problems, or what is it that he chairs?
He chairs the quality
the
improvement.
quality. That's it.
Right.
We like to think of it as quality improvement, not problems.
Right. I'm sorry. I'm not going to use that word again.
That's okay.
But so a whole committee just devoted to quality.
Well, it's probably the most important committee in the hospital, because you have to have the patients want, obviously, to make
Want quality.
reassured
You
that
know,
there's
I'm
good
paying
quality.
all this money. I better get the best, right?
And
Even if you're not paying for it, you
I
get
know. A lot of us have insurance, fortunately.
And you want to just look at and make sure that there are good quality programs, quality control, people looking at outcomes, incidents. Things do happen in hospitals when you treat as many
Absolutely.
people as we do. Reviewing those.
How many people a year? You mentioned 35,000.
35,000 to the emergency room. There are
But-
about 11,000 admissions that come in.
In addition to the emergency
Yes.
room?
Yes.
Some come from the emergency room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But about
But,
11,000 people right now. We're extremely busy.
Are you up to capacity in most of your, do you call them wards, or what do you call them?
It is a
Units?
question, yes.
Yeah.
We call them nursing units. but,
Nursing units, yeah.
And we become so specialized that you have the ICU, obviously. You have the obstetrical
The
areas,
ICU
the
is
intensive care unit.
Right.
And we have what we call the step-down unit, where patients who still need to be monitored for cardiac issues. And we have the obstetrical area and pediatric area. So that we have some specialty areas within the hospital. And quite often we'll have patients who have to wait
Before they can get
into those areas,
you're
because
so-
there's somebody, we're just so busy. And
Yeah.
it's been a good thing, which has driven
It's a good
us-
thing. You certainly wouldn't want the opposite, but it presents its problems.
Well, but as any organization that's going to last has to continue to refresh itself, has to continue to grow, has to continue to keep up with technology, and hospitals are no different.
Yeah.
And we couldn't survive on just the volume we saw even 5 years ago.
Yeah. Wow. Well, now,
While we're talking about quality, would you
Yeah.
like to talk about the affiliation we have with Columbia Presbyterian?
yes,
Because that
yes,
really
let's-
does fit
let's-
right in with
it's
that.
a nice segue into the.
Sure.
Explain this whole thing. I mean, the community sort of knows that we've affiliated. We are affiliated, or the hospital is with. Well, how does
With
how does
Columbia
this?
Presbyterian.
Yeah.
In addition to our own physicians and many of the physicians that we all know locally, there are several areas and growing number of areas in which we have strong clinical affiliations with Columbia Presbyterian.
Such as.
Bariatric surgery. We have a heart failure unit that's staffed by doctors from Columbia Presbyterian. Neonatology, radiology.
Neonatology is young birth.
It's the babies who
are born
are born
premature.
prematurely or with issues that need to be addressed.
One of the issues that moms always ask is, what happens if something goes wrong with
Yeah.
my baby? Should I be here in Bronxville, or should I go to the city? And we like to just respond by saying, you can go to the city, but you're going to see the same physicians, because the physicians in our NICU, our neonatal intensive care unit, are Columbia,
are also on
from
the
New York
Columbia.
Presbyterian. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And recently, very exciting, our radiology, both diagnostic and interventional radiology, is part of the Columbia system.
Mm-hmm. This is mainly for cancer treatment?
No,
not only.
Everything.
Well, if you have a normal, you come in for a normal X-ray, a mammography, an ultrasound, they're all read by physicians who are part of the Columbia faculty.
Is this a trend throughout the United States, these affiliations? And I think we've seen some in, now you're actually affiliated with, Lawrence Hospital is affiliated with other hospitals
We
here.
are, but that's a different type of affiliation, which we can explain to you. With regard that, we are a member of a 4-hospital group called Stellaris Health.
Stellaris.
Stellaris is the 4 hospitals are Lawrence,
Yeah.
White Plains, Phelps,
Which has a very good reputation.
yes, Phelps Memorial, and Northern Westchester Hospital Center.
Right.
We think they're the 4 strongest hospitals, and those 4 hospitals came together some years ago in order to enter into contracts with HMOs in order to have single signature authority, it's
Purchases.
called. So not just purchases, but when we get reimbursed from Blue Cross Blue Shield or from Oxford or from any of the other major HMOs, we have the 4 hospitals negotiating together. It gives us more leverage.
Right.
We get a better rate from them than we would if Lawrence were simply by itself
Acting
on that.
its own. Yeah.
In addition, we have purchasing plans where we get together to purchase supplies and get discounts that way. And very significantly, we've recently bought a new information system together.
The Stellaris group.
Yes.
The Stellaris group of 4 hospitals
Wow.
has bought collectively an information system so that our computer systems for the 4 hospitals are cheaper to us, and yet we get better product because we can spend more
Are they
money
linked?
collectively.
Are they linked, or are they
They're
separate
independent.
systems?
They're 4 separate
Independent yeah.
systems, but
Yeah.
but they're linked and managed by the same company.
That is very interesting. I had no idea. And you really have a state-of-the-art. You've been spending the last couple of years introducing this whole new system. That can be so painful.
It can. January 1st
We're
was
going through it at the college where I work right now, and it is the most painful thing
It
ever.
is. We made the switch on the first phase, January 1st.
Of this year, of
this year, we
2005.
did.
Seamlessly.
Amen. That's
Yes.
really great.
It worked
That's
very well.
wonderful.
We're positioned for the next phase this January, when we'll introduce the nursing documentation phase of the computer conversion and the computerized physician order entry. We're going to use the technology to help support the doctors and their, the old adage about
What are
doctors.
the major big areas? What did you introduce in January? That is
In January,
the patient records?
The patient record, the admissions, the discharge, the financials, the laboratories, the X-rays, the cardiology.
Think of what it was like before the computer.
It was unbelievably
paper.
different. It really was.
Well,
And
you
know,
just
it's very
couldn't do
important
this.
for a hospital to know which services are profitable, which ones aren't.
Absolutely, but you couldn't even track it in the good
No,
old
where
days.
you want to make your investment. There are many hospitals that don't have this state-of-the-art technology to
Right.
be able to do that, and it's dramatically important to the finance staff and to the operation of the hospital.
And those that were smart enough to introduce it early on have such such an advantage
Yes.
over the others.
Well, the patients have an advantage because
Yeah.
the doctors have access to this information now, where with our new investment that we've made, when your lab results are done, instead of either sending them through snail mail or sending them through an email or sending them through a fax machine, the physicians from their office or from their home can look at the result instantly.
From their home even, you're all
sure.
linked to the home. Isn't that wonderful? So when Dr. Chow gets called at 2 o'clock in the morning to come in and help my husband, he can go on screen and see if the tests have been...
See what the lab results
Yeah.
are, see what the X-ray says, and
And the radiology work that's done, they can get a second opinion from a doctor sitting at Columbia Presbyterian or sitting at the Mayo Clinic or wherever.
Right away. It's amazing.
And
I
it is.
haven't thought of all the
Well,
beneficial aspects.
We've made some significant investments, and I like to say about our radiology.
How much is it costing? Has it cost the...
Well,
do I want to ask?
computer system
oh,
alone.
I'm sitting down. How much did it cost
The
to
computer
introduce
system
something?
alone was $20 million over 6 years. The radiology, the news.
Did you raise the funds from?
Some we had, and some we borrow.
And some comes from operation.
Some comes from operations. We have a new CT scan that is the state of the art. There is no more modern one. I think we're the only hospital in Westchester that
No, there are several others that have them, but the hard part about it is we're state of the art today. By the fall,
you won't be.
Well, they'll have a newer model out.
Right. But that cost $1 million by itself, and the room.
The CAT scan is what you mean.
The new CT scan, and the room in which to put it, which needed special wiring, special air conditioning, special air handling, cost about $1 million as well.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Technology is great, but it's very expensive.
It never pays for itself, I would assume.
It does immensely because...
It does immensely, or
well, it does in the sense of patient care.
Oh yes. Oh no, I mean, I didn't mean it.
And I think that's where, when you look at providing, going back to what I said earlier, is the vision of the board was they wanted to have a community hospital that was the model for community hospitals, and in order to do that, you've got to keep pace with technology.
Absolutely.
And you've got to have great quality. And just to go back to radiology for a second, one of my favorite stories is one of the interventional radiologists, and these are the physicians who are able to insert catheters into, I always like to say, every place but the heart. They do what the cardiac people know what cardiac caths are. Well, there are other vessels and organs in the body that also include.
Makes me squeamish to hear about it, but anyway.
They do some marvelous things. They really do that just a few years ago they weren't able to do. And there's some very, very talented people, some world-class, not just local experts, but these physicians are world class, and they're the same people that practice at 168th Street, practice here at Lawrence.
Which is where Columbia Presbyterian is.
Yes. Okay. And what they rotate through their faculty, so we have a different expert here on a regular basis. And one of the physicians was saying to me one day, I saw a patient in my office at the hospital, and she said, well, maybe I should have a second opinion. Maybe I should go to Columbia and see one of the experts down there. And he looked at her with a straight face and said, yes, I could probably see you there next Tuesday.
Charge you twice as much.
But I can see, and she said with that,
that's a wonderful
it's
answer.
A great story. And so you have that level of quality. Now, the other side of that story is that these people are just world-class experts, but they also have very expensive requirements.
Right.
And so we have, this state-of-the-art CAT scan. We have state-of-the-art. We just bought a new fluoroscopy room.
What's fluoroscopy?
Fluoroscopy is it's X-rays where it's an X-ray machine where they also use it's sort of motion pictures for X-rays. We have this, as Dennis said, this PAC system, which is what is done for X-ray film, what digital cameras have done in the film industry, so that when you come and have your CAT scan done or your X-ray done, it's all digital, and
you can stop it at any point.
You can stop it at any point, and if you want to manipulate,
rotate it,
manipulate the data a little bit to see a different picture, change the shading, move something out of the way, the technology is there, and not only is the technology there, but the people who know how to use that technology are there at Lawrence.
Oh, that's wonderful, and it's amazing.
And let's make an offer to your viewers. If they want to come see it, they need only contact us. We'd be happy to show it to them.
We're very proud of it.
We're very proud of it.
I bet you are. I mean, it's amazing. But I was just going back to the fact that you said it cost $1 million for the CAT scan and another $1 million for the room, and it's going to be, by next January, there'll be a new generation of a CAT scan. I mean,
well, we're going to use this one for a while.
Right, but this is incredible how expensive it is to keep current.
And it's just
you have to.
And that's sort of not only, and I think that's part of the, when I talk to people, particularly in Bronxville, the point of contact is usually the emergency room.
Right.
And nobody plans an emergency. Most times people don't feel well and they go home.
Yeah.
And they eventually, either in the middle of the night or the next morning, get up and decide, maybe I better go to see the hospital.
Right.
And they don't realize what's behind the scenes, so that they need to have that CAT scan. Well, we've just invested, it's right down the hall in the emergency room department itself. They need a radiologist to read it, or they might need an ultrasound, they might need an orthopedic surgeon who needs an operating room. And so we're making that investment. in our operating rooms, in our emergency department, in our monitoring system. We're currently exploring now expanding the monitoring system throughout the hospital so that we can take better care of the patients.
You know, as I'm listening to you, I think I certainly can understand, I'm certain you can, listening in out there, why it's so expensive.
Oh, sure.
I mean, just the number of variables and the treatment and the constant upgrading and the training and the...
Sure. If you watch
it's no wonder healthcare...
primetime TV and you watch all the operating rooms and the surgery that goes on, you see that everything now is attached to the ceiling.
Yeah.
All the equipment is available in the operating room. That's what it takes to run a modern hospital.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, we've got to move on. We'll never. You've done a lot with what I call the old-fashioned term community outreach and outreach programs, and I think it's under the umbrella now of Lawrence Community Health Services.
Yes.
Dennis, could you tell us a little bit about that? Because a lot of us in the community are involved in this aspect.
Some of these services are quite old, 75 years old, are home nursing.
Right.
Some are 20 years old and older, Janssen Memorial Hospice.
That's, hospice.
And the Bereavement Center, which is newer. These are three areas that had various issues come up over the years where they had trouble operating on a completely standalone basis. And over the course of time, we at Lawrence have been there for these.
To help them out.
To help them out.
You saved Janssen. That's not too much of a stretch.
It is not too much of a stretch.
No.
Janssen was going through hard financial times.
Right.
But Janssen was a wonderful service and a wonderful organization, and it provided important community services.
With some very, very wonderful people who volunteer.
Great people.
Right.
Great people who volunteer their
of
time.
People in this community. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Bissy Janssen, we all knew her.
And so there were these wonderful services that were struggling alone. And so the hospital stepped in and offered to take them in under an arrangement that gives them very much independence and very much their continuing role in providing services to the community. And yet we're a financial mainstay and backstop to make sure that these institutions continue to survive the downturns as well as the upturns in their business.
Yeah.
We help them get through those times. But the same people, the same wonderful services are available in our community because of that.
Yeah.
And so we at the hospital are very proud of that.
You call it the Lawrence Community Health Services, and that's the umbrella.
That's an entity.
Right.
That's
and
right.
then under that is Janssen Memorial Hospice,
Right.
Lawrence Home Health Care, which is the
Home
nursing.
Home nursing.
Home nursing. I'm
And the
very
Bereavement
involved
Center.
in that, and the Bereavement Center.
And not everybody knows about all of these institutions, but the Bereavement Center, for instance, provides tremendous services to families, to children who lose parents, and for children who lose siblings. And that has been going on for some time. It is a service that was very important following September 11th.
Right.
And I believe that more than half the families who lost loved ones in the September 11th tragedy got services from the Bereavement Center here in Westchester.
That's
half of the
wonderful.
Westchester families.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It
I
is
had no
amazing.
idea that was the case.
It's a spectacular work that they do. Some of the things we're most proud of at the hospital is supporting that work.
Yeah, well, that's good. Finances. I mean, we're all reading in the papers today how the Westchester Medical Center is having great financial difficulty. But I read an article a year ago that Lawrence Hospital was one of the most sound and in a strongest financial situation in the county.
It is true.
How has that been brought about? And
well, in large part, we have the man sitting to my left to thank. He's done a fantastic job of running the organization for the past 5+ years, and we've been.
I give some to the board here too.
Right. Absolutely.
We're supportive of him. Let's put it that way. And so the operations of the hospital have gone well and been really made very, very efficient and cost-effective. Having said that, the future is guaranteed to no one in this field.
Right, you
it's
have
a
to
very, very difficult environment.
Run to stay still, right.
It's a very, very difficult environment. The federal environment, the state environment are
Well,
very
tell us
tough.
a little bit, how does the state impact? How do state regulations?
Let Ed do that.
Well, The state provides, first of all, the state up until late 1999, I think it was, had a very strong role in regulating the rates throughout the state of New York on all hospitals.
Right.
And then in late 99, it became, in the 1990s, late 1990s, it became deregulated. And so there are basically three separate sources of payments, four if you count self-pay.
To the hospital.
To the hospital.
Right,
They
are.
come from Medicare,
Yeah.
which is the program, which is a federal government program, which provides the care for, the insurance for people over 65 and disabled.
Right.
Medicaid, which is a state program, which provides care for those below a certain percentage on the poverty level. And then the commercial insurances, the HMOs, the Blue Crosses, the Oxfords, the Uniteds, that cover most of the people who are working. And then the fourth is just the people who just pay, are uninsured or are self-pay.
Right.
The state of New York involves the Medicaid program and the rates that go that are involved with that.
And they control those rates still.
They do.
Right.
And the federal
and
government.
you have to apply for reimbursement to the for Medicaid.
Yes. Yes.
And
but our biggest, and so the state has an awful lot to say about the rates. They also have a lot to say about what programs and services are offered through that program called Certificate of Need or state approval through the Department of Health. But the largest factor, to be honest with you, is Medicare and the federal government.
why is that? I am
Because
surprised.
most of the patients we see in a hospital are over 65.
Is that just because Lawrence Hospital happens to be
No.
located in one of the communities that has the oldest average
Because
age?
our senior citizens require more medical services than most.
It's the use rate per thousand population for people over 65 is much, much higher than it is for
How
those
much
under.
higher? I mean,
It's about a factor, I think, of at least 3 times, 4 times maybe.
Higher than,
It's the fact of
yeah.
the aging process.
Right.
And
well, maybe we'll reverse that someday.
It seems to have worked in your case.
oh, Dennis, thank you very much.
And so we depend on the federal government, and they set rates. And so about 50% of our business comes from Medicare, which unfortunately for us at Lawrence and for most hospitals in New York this year, there were 2 factors. One was a very modest increase that Medicare granted hospitals, and a recalculation of what that was called the wage index, which basically netted out to a 0 increase for us in the hospital for Medicare. So
That's in the payments.
the payments.
Right, in the payments.
Of course, the expenses keep going up.
Expenses
Absolutely.
keep going up.
I was going to say in the face of... So
and
do we
physicians-
lose money on...
Oh, sure. And
how do we make that up? How have you stayed in the black when we're losing...
Well, there's a couple of ways. I mean, obviously, there is a Medicare pays a certain amount, Medicaid pays a certain amount, and then the other is the commercial insurances, and they're typically charged by all across the country more than Medicare and Medicaid
To compensate for...
to compensate.
And part of that is that negotiated rate we talked about before, which we've been able to negotiate favorable rates as a result of this Stellaris network that we belong to.
And in New York State, that difference is less than it is across the country because of the history of rate regulation. And so it makes it difficult. New York State is one of the most difficult states to run successful hospitals in. The margins across the state of New York are, there's certainly less than 20% of the hospitals that show a positive margin.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Very small.
Very small. And
Is Lawrence Hospital the only one that had a positive margin
No.
there
this
are
year?
a couple others in Westchester, but not
Yeah,
many.
yeah.
And it's a challenge. It's
No,
a challenge
I
because
have
that
no
money,
doubt.
and some people say, well, aren't you not for profit? And the answer is yes, but that means that it doesn't prohibit you making a profit.
Yeah.
You might ask where the money goes that from the profits of year, well, it goes to buy those CAT scans, it goes to buy those,
It's all poured back into
all poured
clinical
back into the
services.
system.
The whole thing.
And,
So you better have some profitable years in order to just keep current with all the technology and
And it's very
services.
hard in this environment.
Yeah.
The state is considering now taxing hospitals in a way that
The
Yeah,
state is
it's-
considering
Yep.
taxing
Yeah,
hospitals?
it's called a gross receipts tax of 0.75%.
Is that working its way through the legislature?
Hopefully not. But it's
Let me help.
It's something that's being considered.
Being considered.
And, every year there's some attack
Little
on
gimmick
hospitals. It's as if the world conspires against hospitals
Right.
being successful in New York.
I was just at a recent meeting in the American Hospital Association, and it was remarked that when you think about the American healthcare system, you think about the pharmaceutical industry, you think about the equipment manufacturers, you think about all of the prosthetic devices, you think about insurance companies, you think about legal lawsuits, and everybody is somehow getting rich off the hospitals and the doctors.
Except the hospitals.
Except the hospitals.
Except the hospitals.
Doctors, and it was kind of striking because
they are the forgotten entity in the healthcare system.
Yeah,
We just assume they're going to be there, and yet we've seen several hospitals close in Westchester County in the last couple of years, and we'll probably see some more.
Yeah, and it's a challenge. And when we look at Lawrence, and so we recognize that, we accept that environment, and we try and work with our associations to change it. But one of the things that we keep coming back to is sort of a response to your earlier question of why has Lawrence been successful?
Right.
And we look at it in sort of four ways, and our goal is to make it a great place to be a patient. And I ask people this all the time, and we spend a lot of time discussing it, even at our board meetings. What does it take to be
Considering that people are sick when they enter,
Right.
This is a mighty tall order.
What do you look for when you want to? Well, you obviously have to be financially sound.
Yeah.
And you need to make sure that your financials are in order. And Lawrence has had some years where it lost money. We've been fortunate in the last several years. We've made some money, modest, but enough to reinvest. So you've got to be financially sound, and we've spent a lot of time with just basic business. When you have 1,200 people that work there, and $120 million of
That's your annual budget?
The annual budget is $120 million.
Wow.
It's
a lot.
It's a lot, and so you've got to manage that. Otherwise, you could find yourself in trouble relatively easy. You got to make sure that, and as you mentioned,
You have to take care of the basics first.
You got to take care of the basics.
And then what are the other?
The next thing people want is good quality.
Yeah.
And we are blessed and fortunate to have some great physicians who I mentioned earlier choose to practice here, trained at all the major medical centers next to the some of the quote city experts that but choose to live and practice here for the reasons that people choose to live in our community, and they're fortunate enough that they can make a career of it and like the quality of their colleagues and quality of the hospital. In addition to that, as Dennis has already mentioned, we've got some great relationships that we have with New York Presbyterian and are in active discussions with them at the moment on expanding those.
Oh, that's good.
And to other services, because we think people, we believe that we want to bring the quality closer. That what we can do better than anybody else is, if we can provide that good quality, is to provide it in an environment that's close to home and is comfortable.
Yeah.
And the third element that people look at when they come to be a patient is that they want to have good service.
Yeah.
And we spend an awful lot of time working and looking and training people on what we call the Lawrence basics. And the steps of compassionate service that we work with our everybody in the hospital.
I'm smiling because when you say the Lawrence Basics, I saw you one day in the cafeteria section giving awards out to some of the employees, and I thought, what a great idea. These people are just so pleased to be recognized. And
some of those awards come from patient nominations.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Once a month. That's nice to know.
Once a month, somebody at the hospital is named for their patient care and the extra mile that they go. And another way, just to mention an example of how this has become so important at the hospital, Ed attended a conference down at the Ritz-Carlton and noticed how wonderful the service was. And
the Ritz-Carlton.
Well, and found out that Ritz-Carlton trains people in service. And Ed sent the senior managers to the Ritz-Carlton training course.
I love it.
To learn how to adapt our service at the hospital to that high
That
level.
has to be in some brochure, I hope, somewhere.
Well, we
Trained at the Ritz-Carlton.
well, I don't care if people know where we were trained. I hope that they understand and
That
can
you do.
appreciate the differences that they see. And when you come in, whether it's the valet parking or whether it's the people who greet you at the front door or the housekeeper who comes in to clean your room, that it's different.
Yeah.
That they will make that contact, the smile. We recognize that people place their lives in our hands, and we want to respect that trust. And we understand the importance of communication. So we studied with the Ritz-Carlton.
Right. And what is the fourth one? I don't want to...
Well, the fourth one, in addition to having great service, you have to have good finances, you have to have good quality, you have to have good service, and the last is good facilities and technology, which brings us sort of full circle back to the issue of our master plan of what we want to try to accomplish.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. That's a nice segue. What do you see, what's coming down the pike for Lawrence Hospital? What are the major new thrusts coming
Well,
down?
there's construction.
I know there's construction.
We're going to be redoing the emergency room to expand it, as we said before, to
You're
accommodate.
actually in the process of doing that, aren't you?
Very much so.
Yeah.
We also, the OBGYN area for new moms and babies, we're going to be expanding that and converting what have been a lot of double rooms that perhaps were not as modern as they should be into single rooms that are.
Oh, that's nice.
And lastly, with regard to the surgical suites, that's on the first phase as well of our
What are you going to be
master
doing there?
plan.
Just updating all the...
Updating and modernization, as well
Adding
as
some new
adding
larger
some
rooms.
new larger rooms to hold all the new equipment that's necessary for some of the surgery.
You all are sort of... Lawrence Hospital is boxed in there. In
We
a way.
are 3.1 acres.
It's too bad. Now, you were telling me before we began this that they moved the Bronx River once. I mean,
They did.
Have you considered moving the Bronx River again
I don't
to
think they'll let us
accommodate
get
the
away with
hospital?
that.
Talk about the story about how they did move the Bronx River. You
Sure.
were-
It's actually a fun story involving the history of the hospital. The hospital has a 95-year history.
Right.
And the original building for the hospital faced the circle, the rotary circle that exists now near
Right.
the hospital in front.
It was right on that
It
circle.
was right on, and in fact, the circle was part of the front parking lot and part of the front lawn of the hospital building, which looked like a big old house. And as the hospital wanted to expand, and also the village wanted to straighten out some of the traffic patterns, the village approached the hospital and actually traded the hospital some land, which is behind the hospital, for the circle. That traffic circle used to be the front lawn, and now it was traded. The village gave the hospital some newly recovered land from the back of the hospital when the Bronx River was moved back.
You moved the Bronx River back.
We moved
I always
well, we
say-
didn't move it. The
The
county of Westchester moved it.
You worked with the county to move
Then
the river
county,
back.
Then the county gave the land that was recovered to the Bronxville village, and the village traded the hospital, the land in the back that is now the parking lot and some of that back area, for what is now the circle. It's just one of the...
Some of those pilings that the garage the existing garage is on are down 90 feet.
Oh,
to the actual old riverbed.
Yeah. Oh, that's
so
amazing.
It's a fun part of the history.
Well, now, did we cover all the new things that are happening? You have expanded emergency room ward, OB/GYN.
That's the first phase, yes.
First phase.
And,
And then the surgical phase to add those additional surgical rooms. And you know, the list is long. And part of this also is that, as with any renovation that many of your viewers may have done, you recognize that all you want to do is add this or renovate that, but then the plumbers come in or the heating
Right,
people come
and one
in and
thing
say you
leads
need,
to another.
and we're no different. It's part of the emergency room project, for example, to add the expansion. It's a relatively modest $3 million project, but there's another $3 million that goes on top of that to put in and replace a 30-year-old heating and ventilation
oh, wow, yes.
system. And so we have to upgrade and modernize, and so we run into that a lot in different places. And just the infrastructure itself is old, and as we start to deal with this, for example, with the construction for the expanding the modernization for the postpartum rooms. They'll be all private rooms, and they'll be wonderful with showers, which they don't have now. Well, we've got to add the showers, we've got to add more plumbing, we've got to add more air conditioning and sprinkle the areas, and it becomes expensive.
Yes.
And if you don't keep up, there will be others who will come, and in Bronxville, it's important that in order to have those essential services,
you have to remain
we've got to remain competitive.
Yeah.
Because people have a choice.
Yeah.
And if we want them to continue to choose to come to Lawrence.
Well, the hospital is looking lovely now. It really is nice to walk in. I must say the construction for the emergency room took a long time, but it seems to be coming around now.
But we always have to be moving forward, and we're very proud of what's gone on at the hospital.
Well, speaking of being proud now, you came a little bit before Dennis became chairman of the board, but you two have had a nice run for a while. And what are the things that have given you the most pleasure so far that you've done, seeing come to fruition? You may have already mentioned them, but...
I for one am very happy to be associated with the hospital. In our community, there's a lot of volunteerism.
Yeah.
But I have found that the hospital is one place where an individual who applies him or herself can really make a difference in what's going on.
And there's lots of room for volunteer activities,
lots of
too.
room. The volunteers at the hospital at all levels are dramatically important to the operations, from the Board of Governors right on down to the volunteer who sits at the desk and greets people when they come in.
Makes a big difference. There's
with
a
that,
book.
With that high level of service.
Yeah.
So all of that's important. But for me, I've been very proud to be associated with this institution. It is important to our community. Over the past, and I'm not just including the few years I've been chairman, over the past 10 or 15 years, the clinical improvements there, the improvements, the upgrade of the facility, the relationship we have with major medical facilities, including Columbia Presbyterian, has brought terrific medicine to our little community.
Yeah,
and so I'm very happy and proud and of what the hospital has been, and I think that if we continue to work hard at it, 10 years from now, others will look back and say the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. And Ed, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
One of the things that I think Dennis will perhaps not mention, but I think it's a credit to Dennis, to George, and George Austin, and several other of our board members who've worked very hard at something that they thought about back when I first came, and they said one of the things we need to do is to reconnect and establish a stronger bond with our community. Unfortunately, that bond began with perhaps the unionization that took place, but that's behind us. And we've reached out to the community, and I think probably one of the things that gave an indication of how successful we've been was the recent gala that we had last.
That was a tremendous success.
It was fabulous.
I know there were over 1,000 people there,
and it was people had a wonderful time and came out in support of their hospital.
Yeah,
and it was I think
it spoke volumes.
It spoke volumes of where we've come, and I think that has been a huge step forward for us. I think the other part that is important, and I hope people notice when they come into the four walls of Lawrence or at home care or Lawrence Community Health Services or Janssen or the Bereavement Center, is that they recognize that there is this compassionate caring and a sense of community with our staff, that when they come in, I like to say to people that we're in the business of providing hope. You come to us hoping that we can fix you. Or that if it's death, that it comes with dignity and respect. And we spend an awful lot of time working with our staff, putting that out in the forefront of people, and it gives us a palpable difference.
Well, it really does. And we could go on forever, but unfortunately we're going to have to call this interview to a close. I just want to thank you both for joining me, and I know the whole community joins me in thanking both of you and the board and all that are involved in Lawrence Hospital for providing such a wonderful hospital to this little community.
Thank you, Marcia. The more people know, the more people, I think, become very committed and satisfied with what we have in the way of services here at Lawrence Hospital. So thanks for helping us talk about it.
No, it's my pleasure.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining us. Good night. Now we need to talk.